Hello and welcome to another episode of Laptop Retrospective, and today I am back with the X1 Nano after using it for 2 months. So please do consider this what I would call my short-term review. And if you are new to the channel, one of the things that I do like to do is take a look at a device over a very long period of time. I really don't think that 2 weeks is enough to get a really firm understanding of what it's like to use a device. So here we are at 2 months later before I start summarizing my key points and feelings on this machine. What we're going to be doing today is actually going from the top of the machine all the way down to the bottom, talking about all of the features and my experiences with them. Without further ado, let's go ahead and start at the very top of the machine. So at the very top of the machine, we can see that there are 4 holes strategically located at the very top of the display. These are actually where the microphone array is housed, and I will say that it is very sensitive indeed. So much so that it is probably worth turning on the noise cancellation on these to make sure that you're not picking up other things in the environment that are competing with your voice and the microphones. Alright, so this is a test of the audio microphone array up at the top here, and this is with the audio acoustic option turned off and keyboard suppression turned off. So if I type, this is what you hear through the microphone. Now let's go ahead and turn on acoustic echo cancellation as well as suppress keyboard noise. Now with both of those things turned on, this is what it sounds like. And if I'm typing, this is also what it sounds like. Just to give you an idea, I was actually in a situation where there was a fan in the office where I was on a call, and without that noise cancellation, it was actually picking up in little pieces the fan noise in the background until I went and enabled the noise cancellation in the Dolby software. And then I also found that enabling it on the application I was using for the conference call helped immeasurably. So do understand that these are very, very sensitive microphones, but they work very, very well. The next thing, of course, that is worth talking about is the web camera array, and it is located at the very top of this display. We have a series of things going on here. The first is the Think shutter, which can be open and closed with a fingernail that will block out the web camera. So if you are worried about unauthorized access to the web camera, you can simply flip that over and you are physically protected from anyone looking through the camera. There's also a Windows Hello infrared camera just located to the left. It is easily one of the fastest Windows Hello cameras I've ever used on any laptop, so you are logging into this thing very, very quickly. The one thing that I will note is that the quality on this web camera is pretty standard, and it's not really all that great when I compare it against what I'm used to in my Surface Book 2. In fact, when I'm on very important conference calls, I'll still use that machine because it has a much nicer front-facing camera than this one does. I think in the year 2021, when this is being produced, I hope that the Gen 2 of not only this machine, but pretty much every other ThinkPad in existence will start shipping with nicer cameras, because I think that is something that people will demand moving forward as an expectation. The next thing, of course, we need to talk about is the display on this. It is absolutely gorgeous, and one of the main reasons that I even sought this machine out in the first place. The touchscreen is incredibly nice, it's super responsive, and it's actually really handy to have 3 different ways to interact with the computer on such a small and thin device. Of course, the touchscreen being one of them, then you have the TrackPoint and then the TrackPad, means that you can pretty much use this device in any way, shape, or form, regardless of how you're carrying it. Related to the touchscreen, in fact, is of course the Hinge. You will note that the screen essentially does not move while it is being touched, which is a fantastic experience. There's no wobble, and that is due to this incredibly strong hinge. But at the same time, that does mean that you are not one-handed opening this. So if that matters to you because you're coming from a MacBook environment, I suppose, then know that no, by design, that it will not be one-handed open. What can I tell you about the keyboard that I haven't already? It is a ThinkPad keyboard, and it is definitely a ThinkPad keyboard, even on the X1, even with the lower key travel. It's an absolute beautiful typing experience. The fact that all the keys are separated means that the likelihood of you making an incorrect keystroke is very, very low, which is excellent. The keys are scalpeled out, so you actually get a little bit more key travel than what you visually see. And it's something that you really need to type on to truly experience. Looking at this, you will think, shallow keyboard, uncomfortable, but nothing could be further from the truth. Of course, right in the center of the keyboard, we do have the infamous TrackPoint, and it is wonderful to have this because one of the main selling features, of course, of the TrackPoint is that when you're typing to navigate, your hands don't need to leave the home row, which means that once you master this thing, you're just going to be flying through documents, web pages, and everything else that you need to do. In fact, I'm probably using the TrackPoint on this, I would say 60% of the time, maybe even 70% of the time, and then the TrackPad for the remaining component of that. It is worth also pointing out that the buttons have a nice firm click, but they're not super loud or obtrusive, and the scroll button is very easy to use with your thumb, with your index finger controlling the scroll speed. Moving right along to the TrackPad, I have mixed feelings about this, but let me tell you why in a second. The main thing that I want to get out of the way is that it is smooth, it is sensitive, it is soft to the touch. The click on it is very subtle. It's not that loud clack that you'll get on other machines, so it's very respective of the workplace environment and also the microphone array up at the top. For those of you that have been on a lot of conference calls, you can almost tell the computer that they're using based on the click of the trackpad. And I'm happy to report that this is indeed very, very quiet. I do miss the taller ratio from my Surface Book 2, which has a 3x2 display, but that's not really a fault of how this machine is configured. But I have in the past, just from training scars, hit the top of the buttons while scrolling up. So I've had to adjust to that, but it's nothing that is worth really complaining about. Just pointing out that if you are making the move from one ratio trackpad size to another, it might take a little bit of getting used to. The fingerprint reader is worth pointing out for one major reason. If you are working in any environment during the COVID pandemic that requires you to use a face mask, you'll know that Windows Hello is now entirely useless because it cannot see half of your face. I am happy to report that the fingerprint reader works flawlessly and it is super fast, just as fast as Windows Hello, if not faster in certain conditions. Having this as a standard feature along with Windows Hello on this laptop is worthy of its price bracket and is a very welcome addition. The other thing that's worth pointing out is the speakers on this unit. We have two upward firing speakers located just above the keyboard deck, and then we have another two speakers located on the bottom of the machine. This creates an environment where pretty much you have good quality sound no matter where this laptop is sitting, whether it's sitting on a pillow on your lap or a desk in your office. You're always going to get good quality and loud audio, and that is not something that you get to say about a ThinkPad very often at all. The other thing, of course, to talk about is the ports on this machine, because you have essentially none, depending on how you view the situation for ports. So on the left-hand side, you have two Thunderbolt 4 ports and then a headphone microphone combo jack. And I have to say, for my use and my experience with this machine, that has actually been entirely sufficient. And I wasn't entirely sure if I would actually be able to say that at the 2-month mark. However, due to a change in how I'm using my laptop in my workplace, this has actually not been the issue that I originally anticipated it would be. And it's one of those situations that until you're put in the situation where you don't have it and you need to use it or don't need to use it, you really start to understand, well, what do I really miss and what do I really use? And while this is certainly not a solution for everybody, it is actually a greater solution for more people than you might think. Now that we're on the outside of the machine, it is worth saying that the chassis is a bit of a fingerprint magnet. I have not actually cleaned the top of this case for this video because I wanted you to see what 2 months of essentially fingerprintness would lead to. So the carbon fiber weave that comes exclusively with the touchscreen model on the top certainly helps mitigate the majority of fingerprints that you'll see on this machine. And considering that this is the part that most people will see facing them, it's probably the part that you'll worry about the most, and it stays pretty clean looking throughout. However, the bottom is a very different story. It will definitely have all sorts of little fingerprint marks, which you can certainly clean off, but after a certain amount of time, you might just say, you know what, I am so tired of keeping this thing clean, and you just run with it. And that's kind of where I ended up with this. And it's fine. It's the bottom of the machine. The only person that's going to see it is me. I'm not really that worried about it, but if you are, just know that it's there. One more thing that's worth noting about the chassis is because this thing is literally less than a kilogram, I actually carry this and another laptop with me to and from work every single day, because carrying this around is not really a consideration that I need to think too hard about. I had a leather folio with some paper inside that I've now since taken out of my bag because I just never used it. And it weighed a little less than what this laptop does, and I have no complaints about making that switch. In terms of battery life, I'm happy to report that there are several days that will go by that I don't actually charge this machine because I don't need to. That's partly because my workload has changed, that I'm doing mobile. So the idea of being unplugged for the entire day doesn't necessarily happen as often as it used to. There would certainly be conditions where that would be the case, but even so, this machine has done very, very well on average, providing me at least 8 hours of battery depending on the variety of tasks that I'm doing. Of course, if you're doing a lot of video conferencing, you're probably at a desk plugged in anyway, which is good because video conferencing is one of those things that will just kill a battery. That's what it does. For those of you that'll want to know, 5 screws on the bottom of the machine gets you in. And as you can see, it is very, very compact in here. I know that at least one of you has pointed out in the comments that, man, it would be really nice if it was a 2280 size drive and not a 2242. But unless they completely redesign the chassis, I really don't know where they would put it. The battery takes up the bottom half of the machine, and the top half is taken up by a heatsink, the board, and a massive heat pipe to keep this thing cool and running nicely. There just isn't room, which is a bit of a downside, but that's kind of the price and the trade-off that you pay. If you want a full-size drive, you're going to have to get a full-size laptop. It is nice to see those 2 bottom-firing speakers here, as well as the upward-firing ones located here and here. There is a place for a 5G card located here, which is currently unoccupied. And then of course your drive is located under that little copper heat shield. And that's pretty much it. So before we get too carried away with any major conclusions, there are a few bumps in the road that we do need to talk about. The first is I went to do an Intel management firmware update about 2 weeks ago. It turns out that it stopped the machine from booting properly. And I could not get the machine to turn on and off. It was simply stuck on the screen that said it was updating the firmware, and I left it for 2 hours with nothing to show for it. I reached out to Lenovo via the premium support, and within 7 minutes was on the phone with somebody telling me to do a pinhole reset. And the pinhole is right here, located above this screw. You insert a paper clip and you hold it there for about 60 seconds, and then you let go, and then you wait about 2 minutes, and the computer essentially clears itself, not the drive, but all the factory settings reset, and it was able to boot, and there were no problems. I was able to carry on with the updates that I needed to do, and everything was perfectly fine. However, I know that some people's experiences with the Nano has varied more than mine. Sebi's Random Tech, for example, purchased a Nano rather recently, and I know that he's been having some troubles with it, and if you're not following his channel, I strongly recommend that you do, because he has some excellent ThinkPad content. And his example of the X1 Nano has certainly had a few issues, and hopefully he can get them sorted out in a way that is good for him. At any rate, ladies and gentlemen, I am going to wrap it up here for today. If you do have any questions or comments about the X1 Nano after I've owned it for 2 months, please leave them in the comment section down below, and as always, I'll do my best to answer them. And if you like this content and would like to see more, I am going to encourage you to do the big 4. Please like the video, share, subscribe, and hit that notification bell, so the next time I give you an update on the X1 Nano, you'll be the first to know about it. Thank you so much, and I will see you next time.